Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday night Anamkara meditation program. With all my heart and with all my love, I welcome you to our program this evening. I'm just delighted you were able to join us, and I see there's folks coming from far and wide, so great to be in the company of people who are, doing practices, committed to exploring and knowing what the highest is within themselves and within the world. And so this gathering, when we get together on these Thursday evenings, is a time to be able to dive into deeper and deeper levels of that knowing and sharing it. You know, the ordinary mind might say, oh, we're separate. Somebody's in Hawaii and somebody's over in this part of the country or this part of the world. But the truth is, in the field of consciousness, we're all intimately connected. Matter of fact, we're beyond intimately connected. We're one. Mm? And so on that level of consciousness, which is the foundational truth of existence, the ephemeral existence of the world, well, it rests on the eternal existence of the one, consciousness itself. So as each one of you is an embodiment of that, an emanation of that, a facet of that, our coming together is, it's like joining the fingers to the hand and the hand to the body, because that's how connected we are. So great to be in your company and to share this time and this sacred space of consciousness, to come to know more and more deeply and fully the truth of who we are, and then be empowered to walk that into the world. Because in this age of Kali Yuga, it's all about both knowing and carrying that into the world. So that the highest dharma, it said, of a human birth is twofold. It's to know and to serve. How do we serve? We serve by bringing the truth of that consciousness, that unity, that loving compassion, that equanimity, that equal vision, no higher, no lower. Nobody's left out. That, as we embody that and walk that into the world, then we, each and every one of us, fulfills that highest dharma, to be a dharma holder, supported by dharma Shakti, the power of that living presence that holds that complete understanding, unbroken, of our unity consciousness. And at a time when things are so fractured and people are so in such opposition, and people are taking advantage of creating opposition and creating differences where there are none, creating hate and discord where there's no need for that. All the more important that we individually, in each one of our own lives, really become inflamed by that truth, carriers of that truth, alight with that truth, so that no matter where we are, there's a luminous quality to how we interact with others. Whether it's a checkout person in a grocery store, whether it's not participating in the crazy road rage that goes on the highways, each one of us is empowered to be a light in our own unique ways in our context, and adding to that luminous, infinite effulgence, trying to shine its way into the dark spaces of this world. And so, because we walk in these dark spaces, so walk with light, walk with that light of knowing, really be grounded in that. And so gathering together to do practices and become absorbed in that, reinvigorated by that, enthused by that, is that much more empowering than for us to carry it forward into the world and give it all away. Because what are we giving is infinite. And that abundance informs our generosity to give and give and give and give. The world, so many people in belief of their little tiny disconnected self. That impoverished state gives rise to such suffering, to such ravenous, greedy wants and needs. People are willing to destroy the earth, consuming everything in sight, because they don't know. And that's a great insight from the Eastern traditions especially, but mystic traditions of all, that here we are. We live with the infinite one, a flame in our heart. The flame of the infinite is residing in your heart here and now, always. But not knowing that, we have so much suffering. And then we bang around the world trying to get rid of it and wind up inflicting suffering on others as well as ourselves. So we cut through that by knowledge, wisdom. Now we've been talking from the Shiva Sutras, and we were talking last time, a couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about in the third section, and the sutra that says Jnanam Bandha, that it means knowledge is bondage, and that it was echoing, because the same sutra is in the first section of the Shiva Sutras, Jnanam Bandha. So there's a real emphasis that knowledge is bondage, but it's knowledge that is the mind-born knowledge. The mind as an instrument that creates divisiveness, that separates and cuts things up, and then wonders why you can't put them back together again, because it's still in the mind field of differentiation. We have to leave that. And that's what the practices empower us to do. Go beyond the mind. Know it's already here fully, but if our mind is demanding all our consciousness, all our attention is bound up in that, we don't perceive it. So that's why that sutra gets repeated, Jnanam Bandha. But it's interesting, in the second chapter of the Shiva Sutras, it also talks about Jnanam Anam, that knowledge is food. Now they're talking about right knowledge. The knowledge, the understanding of I am the infinite. I am the boundless one. I am Shiva. I am Shakti. I am whatever the deity is that calls to our heart, whether it's Tara, whether it's Mother Mary, whether it's the Lord, whether it's Christ, whoever that is. If we keep them as a separate thing, then they remain separate. The point of worship and puja and honoring in that way is ultimately to merge, so that the worshipper and the worshipped become to be realized to be one. You are that, tattvamasi. So that's where we're heading. So that kind of knowledge and the practice of that, so that when something arises and looks like it's different, you're sitting in meditation and a bodily sensation arises. Well, that's where we then say, oh, that too is the divine. That's the divine in the form of that sensation, that thought, that feeling. We don't have to get involved in the content, which takes us down the rabbit hole of getting bound by that, buying into the instrument. Remember, we've also talked about the nature of mind, and one aspect of the mind is ahamkara, the little I maker. So it makes a little me, a little I, out of all the thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories, anything that comes up. It's I'm this, I'm not that, I like this, I don't, but it all gets involved with a little I. So when we're talking about using knowledge as food, we're feeding the fire of yoga. And the sutra that comes before that Jnanam Anam in the second chapter of the Shiva Sutras, talks about how the body is the offering. That what we're offering is to the fire of knowledge, the fire of Shakti, the fire of knowing the truth of who we are. We're offering all the sort of diluted notions that the mind holds that I'm not this, I'm just that. This is separate, that is separate. They're not at all together. So when the Shiva Sutras are talking about the body is the offering, Sharinam Havihi, is that offering is done through this conscious process of saying, no, that too is divine. So we're putting aside the idea, the concept, the understanding, the felt experience of the mind, because the mind feels these things as reality, so that's its nature. But we're invited to know the much grander, the fullness of the reality of the infinitude of being, that then holds it and says, yeah, that's the nature of mind. And that too is my creation. That too is my delight. That too is Shakti. And so we're offering everything up into that fire of knowing that feeds then our ability to sustain that state. Because the state of meditation, the state of knowing our unity with the infinite at all times, in all places, as all things, that's a steady state, not just an intermittent, not just a once-in-a-lifetime grand experience that we write down and revisit all the time. No, it's here and now, right here, right now. So if we're not experiencing it here and now, well, the yogi says, why? Why? It's here. I know it's here. I know it's now. Why aren't I experiencing it? Yanam bandha. The wrong knowledge, that knowledge is bondage. It's the knowledge that the mind holds and holds dearly. I'm just this individual. I'm just in this time and space here and there. I am limited in this way. I'm limited in that way. I don't have this. I don't have, and it can spin out forever. That's what's in the way of experiencing the fullness of your sublime, infinite nature, moment by moment. It's being identified with the instrument that is convinced of its smallness, its separateness, its suffering, its limitations. All of that, Yanam bandha. So that's what we're offering up as we do practices. And in meditation, that offering is by, even as thoughts, sensations, memories, things arise in meditative practice, we counter it with the right understanding. At first it's a thought. Wait a minute. No. My mind is saying that's just this. I'm going, no. That too is my infinite self. That too is the Shakti. That too is the divine. That too is the one. So we're practicing that on a very, kind of concrete level, especially when we were talking in the third section of the Shiva Sutras, that has to do with that level of duality, of being in that state of separation, what's called beta. And so the means, beta upaya, the means for dealing with that sense of being separate. So what we're doing is we're making use of the knowledge, the understanding that perhaps we've even had the experience of, and in order to be able to really transform our experience in the moment. As we're doing that, then we can start to see that, oh, yeah, that's how the body is the offering. We also do that in karma yoga, dedicating our actions to the benefit of others, to create that atmosphere and that inner sense of, it's all seva, it's all selfless service, that everything I'm doing is for the divine. That's all there is the divine, so what else would I be doing? And that gets down to everything, right? That's eating. Who are you eating for? You're eating to sustain this divine creation that you created as the infinite one, to serve in this world as the vehicle of that beautiful consciousness of boundless, loving, embracing awareness. You're taking care of the body so it can walk that and be empowered to bring that into all the realms that it visits in a day. That's how we wind up then incorporating this understanding moment by moment. There's nothing left out. We become skillful at seeing that that every moment we're doing practice. Every moment is the practice of the awareness of this is all the divine. I'm here knowing and serving, delighting in serving. Knowing means that rapturous knowing, that delightful knowing, that loving knowing, that joyous knowing, that state of steadiness and equanimity, that there's no discord at that level. That's what we're invited to know and walk into this world by developing our meditative practices, so that again, the divisive mind, the little mind, well, it says, no, there's meditation and then there's the rest of the day. already is creating an obstacle. Yes, there's times when we do a practice that's solely dedicated, and we sit in the stillness, we sit in the silence, we help steady the body, we develop asana, the right posture, both a physical posture that's quiet and steady, our attention is indrawn. This is all the meditative practice. And so there's time we're dedicating to doing that isn't involved in other kinds of ways of staying focused and attuned to the infinite now in activity. Meditation is saying, I'm going to set aside all activity so I can become completely absorbed in that. It's like giving yourself a chance to take a bath, so that you just rest in the tub and soak in all that is and have it wash away all that isn't. That's a meditation. So we make use of that, but we carry the awareness that meditation is a continuous state. So to be informed by that unity consciousness, that is the root awareness of who you are, always is, always present. So if we're using that as a homing beacon, and using that as even a contemplative exercise, so that as I go about my day, how aware am I of that now? How do I sense that? How do I perceive that? Where's the Shakti of that? Where's the power of consciousness, of revelation? Because one of the aspects of that power of consciousness is revelation and transformation. Well, that puts us into talking about what the yogis called Kundalini Shakti. Kundalini is the power of the infinite to reveal and transform, reveal to our limited self its true infinitude of being, and transform the vehicle so it becomes absolutely transparent to that. So the truth of who you are shines everywhere you go. Because without that, what's shining out? Jnanambandha. The bound knowledge of the mind. It's irritability, it's reactivity, it's past conditioning, the stuff that came out from our families, our culture, our religions, our politics, all the stuff that is the stuff of delusion. That's not reflecting the light of yourself, that's reflecting the light of ignorance. So we start to see that with that kind of discernment, that kind of discrimination, that kind of viveka. Right? So that every moment is informed by that. So that too is then spreading the understanding that meditation isn't just for sitting. Why do we have to sit and meditate in such a quiet way? Jnanambandha. Because the mind is bound to itself, and when you're active, then thoughts are active, the body is active, and what's active is the habit of identifying with that, identifying with the content of the mind, identifying with the actions of the body. So we start with meditative practices where we really try and turn down the amount of stimulus that's going on in the mind, brain, body. That is all stuff it gets identified with, so we can sit in a quieter space, less stuff going on. We dim the lights, we want a quiet environment. That's not because the state of meditation is some fragile state. That's because our ability to know it is developing and is at a phase where it needs things to be quieted down so that we can see that luminous quality of consciousness unimpeded by all the thoughts and feelings and memories and stuff that the mind so gets involved with. That's the only reason why meditation is done quietly in a peaceful environment. It's not because that state of consciousness is fragile, unknowable at other times and places. It's the same consciousness in all times and all places. No matter what's going on, that is present. That is there. That is you. Tatvam asi. Thou art that. So you see how beautifully interwoven, actually inextricably interwoven, the state of knowing is with all of life. Only the mind as an instrument for knowing divisiveness can create that separation. Now, of course, in the Shaivite tradition, in the tradition of this great non-dual understanding, even the mind was created by the Infinite One to know what it is to be separate. The Infinite is always knowing unity. There would be bondage. It would be bound to unity consciousness. So it creates this instrument for knowing difference, separation. And all that goes with that, all the suffering, the pain, the play, all that is to the creation of that one. That's why ultimately the mind can't erase itself. It's not the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, right? It can't disappear to itself. It's the power of revelation and transformation that opens that direct knowing. The eye of wisdom, the one eye that sees oneness. It's opened by that boundless power of grace, the inner guru, the inner Shakti. Call it Shakti Kundalini. We can call it grace. We can call it the divine presence. We can call it any number of different names. But they all point beyond themselves to the truth that that level of revelation, that coming to freedom, that's a gift of grace. That's not something the mind can endeavor to do. The mind endeavors to become, subtle, listening, following that power, following the insight. You have an insight. Do you stay with it? How do you incorporate it into your relationships, into your work? How do you transform that vision and keep it transformed? That's part of the work of the mind. But the removal of that veil, the opening and the expansiveness, that's the gift of your own self. The self reveals itself to the self. So that's why we want to be engaged in practices that are imbued with that. Because just mind-born things are going to keep us wandering around the maze of the mind and bouncing off of that. So we turn to the practices that come out of these extraordinary traditions that are renewed with every generation practicing it, coming to the same realizations, coming to the same living experience, so that it is made fresh, made anew, over and over. So we're always passing on this newness, this freshness. Revelation is here and now, always here and now. That's what we share. Now, in the third section of the Shiva Sutras, it also talks about how realization is attained by the conquest of this delusion. The deluded nature of the mind is that it's identified with limitations, all the limitations, body, gender, roles, past, the conditioned mind, reactivity, all that stuff. That's all the deluded nature of the mind. So the yogis are taking a very different look at reality. They're saying, everything basically that we're seeing in culture and society is the unfolding of that deluded state. This is particularly pervasive in Kali Yuga. Because in Kali Yuga, the true knowing, that highest knowing that sadhana practices are aimed at, that's enjoyed by very few. As opposed to Satya Yuga, when we talked about that, the first of the 4 ages, where everybody knew. Practice was spontaneous and ongoing. They lived it. They practiced it. It wasn't a practice like you even had to consciously practice. You lived it because you knew it. And then, over the course of the next 3 ages, that knowing diminished, was degraded, until we're here in this Kali Yuga where ignorance is what dominates the world. And all that comes out of that ignorance, the delusion, the suffering, the struggle for domination, control, exploitation. Somebody's going to be higher than the other. Somebody's going to have more than the other. They have to have this because they're so bloody empty. that you couldn't fill it with all the universe. That's all delusion. And that's the suffering that we create out of that deluded state. We exploit and destroy the world. So this is a time where true knowing is especially important, to be kept ignited, alive, that you are a light with that and walk that into the world. Well, that's what when it's talking about in the third section of the Shiva Sutras, that by the conquest of delusion, the supreme realization is attained. That delusion, well, that's what we're fighting with, you know? That's what we're overcoming. That's the conquest. How is it done? By knowledge, right? So when we're saying jnanam anam, the knowledge you're feeding, the fire of consciousness ablaze within you, is the fire of knowing I am, all is. Anything that arises, yes, that too, and that, and that, and that. Yes, all the divine, all deserving to be treated as the divine. That's the knowledge that consumes the deluded state. That's the fire of yoga that we throw everything onto. Any thought that's bound by that little ahamkara, we put it on the fire. Fire, you know, it transmutes. It releases bound energy, turns it into light. That's the fire of yoga. That's the fire within you. That's the fire of Shakti. That's the fire of mantra. That's the fire of knowing. That's fire of coming to rest in aham, I am. I am. That alone can burn up all delusion. Aham, I am. It's the I am of I am all there is. I am the infinite. I am the one. I am Shiva. I am Shakti. I am Saraswati. I am Parvati. I am Sundari. Aham, I am. Who can say what I'm not? Neti, neti, iti, iti, Shiva, ham, ham, sa. Aham, I am. Aham, I am. Aham, I am. That's the kind of consciousness that is bubbling up within us, that we can celebrate, we can delight in. Every moment that's there, that dance. And so that's what partly the Shiva Sutras are pointing to come to know that. In fact, it says in another sutra in the third section, it calls Nartaka Atma, the Atman, the little self. The self is the dancer. It's dancing. It's dancing as all these forms. It's dancing in the delight of knowing. It's dancing as all of creation. But we have to have the eyes to see that. Otherwise, it's not a dance. It's a slow, torturous, unfolding of whatever is. No. That's because that's a deluded state of mind that experiences it that way. To know the self and to revel in its creation is to know the self as the dancer. Then it goes on and says, the inner self is the stage. So the inner self, this is a sutra saying, so the self is the dancer and the self is the stage. There's no separation here. This is all one unfolding together. Then it'll go on and say, that the senses, well, they're the spectators. So we have this beautiful view in this third section of the Shiva Sutras, inviting us to look at, even as things are unfolding, to go, the one witnessing it, that's the self. And it's the self even in the form of the senses. Witnessing, the sense of touch, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the sense of vision, the sense of hearing, that these are facets, again, of the one witness, now empowering to delight in these different channels through which information and knowing come. To know the limitation, but to know that even the limitation is the expression of the divine, the infinite, dancing as that little thing. The underlying energy is always one. The underlying consciousness, what took that form? It's only consciousness. Consciousness is the root of all that is. So when we see this, it's the same as quantum physicists talking about consciousness is what becomes all. That there's nothing here that you can point to as having any solidity. It's all energy. That energy has the quality of consciousness. And as the instrument becomes more refined, more sublime, so you get to the instrument of a human consciousness, a human body, a human mind, then that's a form that can start to know its infinitude once again. A limited form, a bound animal, a bacterium, a crystal, these don't have the qualities to them as vehicles of consciousness to know the infinitude of being. The human birth and the human form is one that has that. That's why it's also revered and valued, because it's a form that can come to know the truth of its existence. It can shed the ignorance, the deluded state of thinking, I'm just this person, just this thing, just whatever is. And come to know the infinitude of being. Revel in that, delight in that. Walk it into the world. And especially, again, at this time, in Kali Yuga, this is how we uphold dharma. Because we can see and look around, who's upholding dharma? Poor dharma. This is what we talked about in the past, about how that sacred cow, as the embodiment of a symbol of dharma, and this fourth age of Kali Yuga, she's lost 3 of her legs and only has 1 to stand on, and that it's incumbent upon us to be the other legs, to stand for dharma. But what does that mean? Oh, it means to stand for the light of the truth. We stand and walk that into the world, that there's other choices we can make, that we can see each other and want the best for everyone, that we can all flourish together, that this is part of our dharma, is to live that into the world at this time, wherever we might be. So that's fulfilling both the dharma of what it is to be a human and fulfill our highest dharma, to know and to serve, but it's also how we cut through the delusion that binds us to our own limitations of mind and body. Because the mind and body don't become unlimited. The body's going to be limited, well, until it passes away. And then finally its constituent elements can dissolve back into the one. The mind as a construct, as this instrument created by the infinite, even as it's transformed into the perfect servant of your own sublime self. That's what we want the mind to become. That it doesn't suddenly go off and go, oh, I'm so angry about this, or I really want that, because that's not serving. So it gets free, it gets clear, it becomes transparent, that it already is bathing in such fullness. There's no room for want or need. And it can walk that into the world. That's what we're then called upon to do. So all of these practices and making use of knowledge as food, yanam, anam, that's feeding this understanding. So that understanding then even infuses the limited mind. Because that's the limited mind needs to have these much purer, higher thought forms, belief forms, experiences, repeated experiences, because as the mind and body participate in the unfolding of revelation in the moment, that experience, whether it's sitting in meditation or looking at a beautiful sunrise or looking into the eyes of a loved one, those experiences, they help to recondition the mind and body. So we decondition it from past reactivity and conditioning and trauma, and recondition it. Now, so it comes to go, oh, the true ground of my being is this beauty, this delight, this love. I want everybody to know that. Wars can cease. Famine can cease. Pollution can cease. They're all born of the same ignorance, that somebody has to have more and doesn't care about what the outcome of getting more is to somebody else. That gets played out over and over and over again, and has for thousands of years. But we can become conscious, walk that consciousness into the world, and remind people. I say remind because though they may, anybody, and each one of us goes through that, be so bound to the mind that we've thoroughly forgotten, the self is still there. That light is still there. And so we can be calling to that light, sort of speaking past the other person's mind, saying, there's a choice. There's a choice that we can make to act differently, to think differently, to change the inner atmosphere of our inner world so we change the atmosphere of the outer world. That we become absorbed in a stream of grace, a stream of revelation and transformation. That stream, well, that's mantra. Seems so mundane. Why? Oh, because the ordinary mind makes things ordinary. It doesn't see that if you could see, Om, you never want to look at anything else. You can see Om Kalima, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Mani Padme Hum. These are ablaze with light. The poor mind, bound in its ignorance and its delusions, can't see it, doesn't recognize it. So we have to go on the words of others, on belief and hope, until we have the experience ourselves. That's why we do practice. To experience these truths directly, fully, for ourself. That's what truly empowers us to walk it into the world, to simply be an embodiment of that. So as we walk, we touch the earth in a different way. It brings to mind the beauty of Thich Nhat Hanh. His peace is every step. To gracefully touch the earth with every step. To walk peace. Peace that's born of knowing, true knowing, complete knowing. The knowing that says, yes, I can see all the pain, the misery, the delusion. I can see its source, the ignorance. I can see even how the infinite is the only one to blame, even for that. But I can also see past it. And I can see how also the infinite is empowering us to walk the light of true knowing, to bring relief to suffering for ourselves and all beings. We're empowered to do that. So we're going to chant now for a few minutes so that we can bathe in that power of mantra, the power of revelation and transformation, the power of your own infinite, sublime self. It takes the sound form of mantra as we chant. And that vibration penetrates down to the marrow of our bones. Chanting is also exquisite practice because it projects that Shakti, that true knowing, that highest vibration, projects it into the world. So it's transforming both our inner experience and it's helping to support the transformation of the world. And then it takes the sublime form of just a mere thought as we sit in the stillness after we chant. And then just Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Om Kalima. Just silently until you discover it's repeating itself because we're becoming attuned to what already is. The mantra is already going on right here, right now, always right here, right now, at all times, in all places. Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Om Kalima. Invoking the great mother, the divine mother, which gives birth to everything. Om Kalima, Om Kalima. The body, Om Kalima. The thoughts, the mind, Om Kalima. Perceptions of what seems to be somewhere else in time or space, Om Kalima. We meet it all with Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Om Kalima. It's all there is. It's all there is. Om Kalima, Om Kalima. And then it erases itself. Mantra dissolves itself into the infinitude of simply being. The stillness, the spaciousness, the all-embracing, loving being. Nothing, no one left out. And I mean, whole galaxies, the entire universe. You can know it, to be held in that embrace. Your embrace, because you are that. Tattvam asi. We come to know that, rest in that, live in that, breathe in that. So we'll chant now for a few minutes, and then we'll just sit in the stillness afterwards. And whatever arises, just Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Om Kalima. Doesn't matter what it is. Om Kalima, Om. Meet it with that clarity, that knowing. Om Kalima, Om Kalima. Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai. Om Kali Ma Kali Namo Namah. Kale Namo We end with this prayer. May all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. And namaste. The sublime truths of the Shiva Sutras, in a sense, they can be summarized in one shloka from the Kashmir Shaivite tradition. Na shivam vidyate kvachit. There is nothing that is not the consciousness of the auspicious one. Consciousness. All consciousness. It's the mind that sees forms that seem concrete and solid. Just consciousness dancing on the stage of consciousness, witnessed by instruments of consciousness, watching the play of consciousness. That's what we're invited to shift our understanding to, that we know that in addition to knowing what the ordinary mind does and how it sees, that's how it fulfills its dharma in the world, but now it's going to fulfill it with that transcendent sense of being, with all the wisdom, all the boundless love and compassion, kindness and patience, equanimity. That is your true nature, that can then suffuse the mind, suffuse the body, so that you walk that into the world, so that you're a living reminder of what the truth is, because you embody it so fully. Jai Ma, Jai Ma. These are her gifts. This is what we're offered over and over again. That's what's inherent in one repetition of mantra. One syllable, Om, holds it all. How close it is. Just the other side of that mind, caught in its delusions. Consciousness isn't caught. We don't have to wait for the mind to be thoroughly free. Consciousness already is free. We shift our point so that we come to know, stand in the self, look at the poor deluded mind with compassion, with wisdom, with equanimity, with skillfulness. We help transform our own mind. We help transform our own body so that they become the servants they're capable of being for walking that loving compassion, kindness and patience, wisdom and strength into this world. So, thank you for coming this evening. Thank you for being ones engaged in this kind of practice and walking it into your everyday lives, living it as fully as you can, moment by moment. Thank you. Thank you for having that kind of dedication and commitment. Even when it's intermittent, it's okay, we keep coming back to it. Then it becomes more and more continuous. So thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you again in the next program. So, once again, with all my heart, with all my love, I thank you for being with us this evening.